Good morning, everyone. So don't get scared. Taxation, I know, is always scary, especially when we as individuals have to deal with our national tax authorities. A few words about me. So let's start with something simple. I'm human. No, I'm not an AI. No, I'm not a robot. Unfortunately, in this world, we have now to start taking boxes to certify that we are human beings. We are developing protocols that are called proof of humanity, which I think is quite interesting, but also mind-boggling and perhaps even scary, because we are creating technologies that ask us now to prove that we are humans. I'm a human, I'm multilingual, I'm multicultural. This is my academic background, and some of you I have met 17, 16 years ago at SOAS. Other people we have met in the course of our lives. And this is what I do. I'm an international tax lawyer. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an innovator. And these are some of my activities. So I have 4 pillars. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an advisor. I'm a researcher. And I also have a portfolio of board mandates in several companies and NGOs and international associations, one of them being the International Association for Trusted Blockchain Applications, INATBA. I was elected 3 months ago as the chair of the board, and so this is one of the 100 hats that I'm also wearing today. My main activities go through Imani Partners, which is my strategic advisory firm that I founded in 2009. When I was living in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I do everything that is upstream, non-regulated legal and tax activities. And I'm also an equity partner in a law firm called Mosaic, HQ'd in Paris, with offices in Mexico City, Hong Kong, hopefully in Cambodia, and hopefully next year through a partnership with a dear German friend in Dubai and perhaps Kenya, where some of my family is from. So this is the real title of my presentation today. I tokenized tax. How did I land that? It's actually the product of 4 years of research because I'm finishing my PhD on regulation and taxation of digital assets. Katarina, thank you for allowing me to do my coming out of the closet today and to present the product of my PhD research. Before I landed on I tokenized tax, simply enough, but actually gazillion of questions came to my mind for the past 4 years. I only put a fraction of those here. I have written the first version of a white paper, about 100 pages, that is published on GitHub, ResearchGate. Happy to share the link for you to have more details on that. And what I'm about to present is really the quintessential of my research. So how do we do that? Can we do that? For what purpose? Do we need to look at classification of digital assets between payment tokens, security tokens, and utility tokens? Actually, no, because if we look at decorrelating the wealth creation, which is what we're looking at taxing, really, and the taxpayer, then we don't need to know who the taxpayer is. So privacy is preserved by design. This is a solution that I've also built with consent by design. It's fraud resistant by design because it's about taxing everything that happens on the blockchain. And the idea is instead of having only an industry or industries in the emerging technologies that benefit from regulatory sandbox, but also tax incentives, lack of regulation. It's about now joining forces and from the civic perspective, trying to restore some fiscal justice and also ask those industries to contribute, but in a painless way. That's the bottom line. And so how do we achieve that? In 4 points. But before I get to my 4 points, I would like to explain. So I created a tokenized micro flat tax. It's a bit of a barbaric acronym, the TMFT, but it's about embedding justice, fiscal justice, in code. And so it's a civic protocol for programmable consent and fiscal dignity. So why? Digital assets are without borders, transactions are happening. Crypto-to-crypto transactions are not taxed today, and therefore it becomes a challenge where a huge amount of wealth is being exchanged without any contribution being made by the operators of those transactions. The fiscal frameworks, as you know, is always the last wagon of the train of regulation, right? Because we're still looking at legal qualification, how do we regulate the industry? Europe, the UAE have some frameworks, the US is looking at it, but perhaps not after all, we don't know. And so facing this uncertainty, fragmented regulation, as some of the speakers yesterday and today have already talked about, and also how slow the legislative processes are to be able to implement that, and also how we look at that from the national perspective, and because of rates, because of sovereignty, etc. I think states are facing those issues. No audit trail, no real-time capture, but also no jurisdictional enforcement. Because it's difficult to capture something that is happening in the international sphere, so cross-border by essence, and then how do the national tax authorities capture that? A small disclaimer. I am not anti-regulation, but I'm not a big fan of over-taxing, and I'm not a big fan of over-regulation. I like smart, painless, practical regulation, including taxation frameworks. So my best friend calls me Chief Improvement Officer. So think of me as that when looking at taxation frameworks that are currently out there. So the real issue is that tax base is eroding, and therefore public services are suffering. We know that in the northern hemisphere of this planet, and it's even more acute in the southern hemisphere. So if code redefined finance, why not tax? So in 4 points, the first one being that's a new protocol for contribution. It's a programmable tokenized micro-flat tax, meaning that it's a minimal tax that would be, if you were a layman on Kraken with your wallet, you see transaction fee, you see gas fee, and in time I hope we see tax fee. So it becomes automatic, it becomes normal, and it becomes minimal, and therefore painless for anybody who does a transaction on the blockchain. May that be an expert doing that peer-to-peer, or may that be somebody less expert doing that through a DEX, or even less expert doing that with wallets available through Web2 portals. It solves 3 systemic problems: the undercollection, also the cost of running tax administration, and the cross-border avoidance, which we know has been the focus of the OECD for the past, 2 decades now, as far as I can remember. I started my career 25 years ago, where going to Aruba and Curaçao for structuring were like normal. Today, you go to jail for that. So we have to be extremely careful, because the room for maneuver has shrunk dramatically. And the techniques for cross-border avoidance have become more sophisticated thanks to technology. Sorry. So the act of contribution is now rebuilt in the in the native language of digital assets. I believe that when you have a technology, today it's blockchain, tomorrow it will be powered and enhanced with AI, if not already today. In, I don't know, a year or 2, we're gonna see quantum, perhaps, technology, accelerating the speed of those transactions, the volume of those transactions, and then in 5 years from now, we don't know what next tech is gonna become, post-quantic, and then my kids will tell me in a decade what they will be inventing for me to then lose my mind and try to fix it and then put it back into legislation. The idea is that if you speak the same language as the technology that is emerging, then you're already at par, and then the forces at play are rebalanced a bit. I'm all about rebalancing things, and so you will see that that has been one of my underlying principles throughout this proposal. The second point is that I have invented a double protocol for proving, not enforcing. So, proof of transaction, POTR, to validate the what, the when, the value, and the chain. It's about the wealth creation. Because when you decorrelate taxpayer and wealth creation, and you want to tax the wealth creation, you need to have some data on that. And this is what proof of transaction protocol is about. Then, once you have identified the wealth, you need to be able to prove you have paid your tax on this. So proof of compliance, which validates and proves consent has been given, the jurisdiction, and the eligibility of your transaction or you as wealth creator to pay, that you have paid your tax. This means that we are legally routing taxation, we are embedding it into the technology, it's transparent, but also it's revocable compliance because you have to choose to be taxed. It's a consent-based, because consent is designed into that innovation. It's real-time, it's automated remittance, which means that the normal consequence of that on the tax administration side is huge amount of savings, because you don't need human beings to check the truckload of volume of data that CASPs will have to send to the tax authorities under the CARF or under DAC 8 tomorrow when it will be transposed, the directive on transparency and how reporting has to be. So DAC 8 is a directive in the European Union. It's the, in my view, imperfect translation of CARF into the EU framework because it includes staking and lending, which the CARF doesn't look at. And so when you have that, you need to have human beings who understand the data they get from the tax administration perspective. All that is eliminated thanks to that. When we look at how European states, northern hemisphere states, southern hemisphere states are in dire need of more budget, cost savings, this is a no-brainer, I feel. Feel free to challenge me, though, because you will have the opportunity to ask questions at the end. So it's not about surveillance. It's not about enforcement. It's just about proving you have created wealth, you agree to pay minimal, painless tax on it, and therefore, once you have paid, you get the proof through your proof of compliance, a token issued by the tax administration saying, yes, you have paid your tax. My third point is about legal compatibility and sovereign by design, because it's already compatible with OECD CARF. What's the point for the OECD to spend so much time, so much effort in enacting the crypto asset reporting framework if the next step is not to impose taxation on those transactions? And it's transaction-based, so the logic follows. They're not looking at taxpayers, they're not looking at identity, they're not, so it's preserving privacy by design, and I'm only following that train of thought. It's compatible with UN digital principles, it's compatible with MiCA, GDPR, ADAS, etc. And the first line, I have submitted some draft clauses to the French Ministry of Finance. But you know, in France, right now, we are looking at so many other problems. We have to cut the budget, and we have to make 40 billion euros of savings, and therefore, in France, they really don't care about my ideas about levying more tax through blockchain transactions. It's a shame, but it's like that. On the other hand, many African governments, and some in the Middle East, have reached out to me to be able to pilot this in their jurisdiction. So in regulatory sandbox, in a very limited perimeter of wealth creation ecosystems, not to say, innovation hubs. But I'm trying to implement this as MVPs in partnership with governments. And the jurisdictions still preserve its right to determine the rate, the asset scope, the exemptions, if any, and the wallet routing. Because really, for a public administration, a government to create a wallet address, it's probably a 10 minutes exercise. We know that intelligence agencies do that for the purpose of terrorism, for fighting terrorism and for fighting money laundering. So why not to use it for a positive purpose and use that 10 minutes of creating a wallet address in an open, public, transparent way to be able to collect tax like that. Tokenizing tax is not about erasing sovereignty, it's about making it operational in a technology environment, speaking the same language as the technology itself creating wealth, and in a modular manner, because it's a plug and play. And there are more details about that in my 100-page white paper. The fourth point and final, before I get to my concluding remarks, is the consent by design. I think it matters. The proof of compliance is an opt-in, opt-out type of solution. So you are a wallet owner. Nobody knows who you are besides your wallet address. At some point, hopefully, when partnerships will evolve between governments, so I'm looking at PPPs, what we call in the old world PPPs, public-private partnerships between governments and exchanges. Once that's done, when you log into your Kraken or your Binance wallet, there will be a box to tick saying, I opt in, and that's when you start contributing on every transaction. The effect is that AI bots doing high-frequency trading, they will not be opting in for that kind of solution because it's usually human beings who would be motivated, driven by a civic passion for contribution, improving the collection of their state. It's like adding a few cents at the cashier for a donation to UNICEF or for, it's the same type of logic that I'm applying to crypto transactions. But in the end, a cent plus 10 plus 20, considering the huge amount of transactions that are happening, is gonna become a substantial pot of money. And so the collector will be in a better shape to be able to fund improvements in the state, keep funding welfare states in the Northern Hemisphere, trying to build infrastructure, basic infrastructure in